So, now it is a pleasure for me to welcome one of the trainers of our Digitale Leute School. So please welcome on stage David Pereira, CEO, CPO of Omoko. A big applause, please.
Yeah.
So he will talk about how to do product strategy right. And David, thank you again also for doing the teaching at the Digitale Leute School. So I'm looking forward to your talk now. So the stage is yours.
Thank you. I have been thinking about something, and I guess you have been thinking about it too. We're fooling ourselves. We think we're doing the work, but actually, we are discussing more than doing it. The days of product people are full of context switching, full of meetings, and many things that happen, and so on. So you start the day, you have a daily stand-up, you discuss what happened yesterday, what you're going to do today, and then eventually, what do you have? There will be stakeholders who want to talk to you, and they want you to commit to delivering things by yesterday. If they cannot convince you to do that, they want you to put their request into the backlog that eventually you're going to discuss further in a backlog refinement. And eventually you need to do some planning for the sprint, for the quarter, and so on and so on. So when you end the day and you ask yourself, what have I done? You do know you have been pretty busy, but you don't know who actually did the work. You spent a lot of time talking about it, and it's very hard to get the work done. Some things will not change. There's always more work to do than available capacity. And there's one question that remains almost always unanswered. If you can get that answered, the magic will happen. What matters most right now? Generally, you're going to hear, these are our goals, priorities. Everything is plural, because everything matters equally. And then someone tries to solve this problem, and they're going to come up with something. It looks like this. Let me show it to you. I need to show. It's a beautiful... Have you ever seen something like that? Have you ever seen? It is a beautiful feature roadmap, you know? It's clear who is going to do what, by when. And everyone knows the plan precisely. And it's a great thing to fool everybody. And guess what's going to happen? We're going to talk more about work and more, because dependencies will take place and so on and so on and so on. Some people call this even the strategy. We know what to do, when to deliver, and how the teams are working. What we forget about is in digital product management, there's no such thing as predictability. And we do suck at estimation. And we keep doing that. Does anybody know why? And then I have a question. What should we do with this? The easiest thing is we follow whatever is in this plan here, cross your fingers, and hope for the best. Maybe we're lucky. Or we should do what is necessary. Any suggestion what I should do with that? I like this one, so we should do just like this and then throw it away and say, let's have a serious conversation right now. So when it comes to product strategy, you need to know that a bad product strategy will block progress. Teams have to do what? Discuss about work, because nobody can make any bloody decision. And what is a good product strategy then? A good product strategy will just simplify decision-making. Team just said that before. Yes or no. It's very simple. It's like that. You know what you're not going to do. So a sign you have a bad product strategy in place is what I mentioned. You have this crap there, the distraction map, and then you start talking more about work. The question is, how can we influence a good strategy? So we need to understand what it is. First, it's all about decision making. And what are the elements of that? There will be some elements that will help you simplify decision making. It is all about that. So the very first thing is, why? What is the purpose? So where are we going? What does success look like? In other words, where do we want to land? And what else do you need to talk? You need to have goals in different levels. So what are you wanting to achieve in long term, short term? And what are you aiming to achieve right now? So you need to have clarity on that. What else? Who is your audience? But not only that, who is not your audience? Because if you try pleasing everyone, you will end up pleasing no one. And you do need to know the game you're playing. Which constraints do you have? So you can accelerate the decision making. And what else? So let's take an example here. I want to step out of the digital product for a bit. And I'm going to talk about something nice, about restaurants. Everybody likes eating. So El Bulli was the most famous restaurant in the world for a while. Actually, they got to the top, 5 times the best restaurant in the world, 3 Michelin stars. And they had 2 million requests for dinner every single year. But they would only accept 8,000 dinners. So what is interesting about the Bulli? We can look at the 2 sides of the coin. What good strategy looks like, and what happens when you fail to update that on time. So some characteristics. It has a focus. El Bulli focus on having a memorable experience. If you're going to have dinner there, it would be something unique. Even the cutlery, they partner with a Swiss company to be specific for the moment you're going to have dinner with them. Everything was memorable. You would not forget about it. And they knew how to differentiate from competition. Look at the word, differentiate. I'm not saying being better than competition. You want to be different. So what they did was, it was impossible to repeat a meal there. Every year would be different. So it's always changing. And they also knew who they would not serve. If you were searching for something traditional, they simply don't serve that. El Bulli was in Spain, close to Barcelona. And if you wanted to eat the classic Spanish tapas and so on, they would say, not here. We don't offer that. And they were very authentic. They didn't even have an a la carte menu. You would arrive there to have dinner, and the chef would talk to you, would understand if you have an allergy, your preference, and then they would bring the food to you. About 30 courses. The meal would last about 5 hours. And another thing that they did to get to this stage here, the price they had was very high. If you convert to today, it would be around $400, more or less like 370 euros, something like this. It was very high, so they were targeting the premium audience. But they also played on the scarcity. They were open only 6 months a year. And you may wonder, what did they do the other 6 months? If they have a new a la carte, a new menu every year, they had to do something about it. So they remained closed 6 months a year to do experimentation. And they would try about 5,000 new dishes. And only 150, 130 would make to the next year. Ferran Adrià, who was the mastermind behind it, he would say the following: we had 98% of learning and 2% of success. Learning. He didn't call it failure. These dishes would just not make to the next menu. This enabled them to get to the top. 5 times the best restaurant in the world. Also, 3 Michelin stars. But in 2011, they closed the doors with recurrent losses of more than $500,000. Why did that happen? things change. And strategy has to adapt. They had some things here, look, 2 million people requesting to have dinner there. Demand was really higher than the offer, 250 times to be more precise. And they didn't change the price, they kept the same price, they didn't try something else. They just kept the same strategy. What led them to the top also made them close the doors. So strategy is time-bounded. You need to adapt to your reality. So before we talk in more details here, how you can play this game, we need to talk about what is not product strategy. And it's one of my favorite talks. I like making clear what not to do, because sometimes we talk about what we should be doing, and we end up doing everything that we should not be doing. It's quite fun. Not really. So strategy is not that. If someone thinks that strategy is just this rigid plan that everyone must follow, we end up just talking more about the work. And then you end the day not knowing who is doing the bloody work. It is not an immutable set of artifacts. It's not like that. Things will just change, and it's just part of the game. Your only certainty is change will happen. And some people think that strategy needs to be complex. It needs to be something fancy that when you present to your investors or C-level, whoever it is, they say, this person is super smart. If you cannot tell your strategy in a few words, you're missing the mark. It should be simple. It should enable you to simplify decision-making. Nothing else, nothing more. And also, this game we are playing here, the digital product game, there is no such thing as a success recipe. You're going to have some assumptions. You need to test them to see how they stick with reality, and so on. And then you adapt. Because one thing you need to understand that no plan will survive contact with customers. You think something is going to happen, customers surprise you. And what else? It's not. It is not a mask for project management. Not against project management, but strategy, it is something to simplify decision making. That's it, simple like that. But then it comes this thing here, that we need to understand whatever strategy you're going to create, you're going to have assumptions behind it. There is a beautiful definition of assumption. They are beliefs we lack evidence. I like saying it's just things that we don't know and we need to test. And once I heard from a colleague of mine that untested assumptions are the mother of all fuck-ups. We assume something is going to happen, we ignore that, and then we are crying later because customers don't want to use what we invested years building. That's bad. No matter how good your strategy is, you are gonna pivot. You will change a little bit before you thrive. The question is, how fast can you do that? For today, I want to look at one. Does anybody know Glitch? I don't see anyone raising the hand. I'm pretty sure you use their product, or used at least. You don't know Glitch? Let me give you more information. 2010, they got 5 million investment as Series A. It was a multiplayer platform, but they couldn't get enough users. But they were good with storytelling. They could get more money. So they got more money from investors 2011, 10.7 million. And then 2012, the investors start getting annoyed. When are you going to give us something we can sell? This thing is not flying. Then they went back and they said, okay, either we go bankrupt or we do something now. So they find something to do. In 2013, they started looking at this searchable log of all communication and knowledge. What is that? Searchable log of all communication and knowledge. What happened was the developers who worked at Glitch, they were super annoyed with communication tools back then. They said, there's nothing good here. It's very hard for us. They created their internal tool. And it turned out that tool was not bad, actually. They said, what if we transform this tool used internally that has nothing to do with the pitch we made to the investors, but we love this tool. What if more people would have the problem we have? Then, what happened? It was the birth of Slack. The rest is just story. But this didn't come like, let's build a communication tool. The beginning was all about building a multiplayer game platform. And then, eventually, it pivoted to Slack. There are many other tools that happen like that. Instagram was not born Instagram, was born Bourbon. Twitter was, now it's X. X was not born like it is. Like Twitter was not born Twitter. It was another thing. So they pivot. All of these big platforms pivot before they succeed. The same will happen with whatever strategy you follow. So you need to understand the piece of this puzzle. One of the challenges is the following. If you go to Google, or even if you decide to use AI to say, how do I craft a product strategy? You are going to find probably hundreds of ways. And I don't dare say I have the ultimate answer for that. I can say there are some ways of creating that will accelerate decision-making, and they are simple. You can create them in hours, not days. You do need to confront them with reality. I'm going to share what has worked with me in different companies, different size, startups, scale-ups, and so on. There are some elements. But you need to know you have to adapt to your context. So the very first thing here is to understand where a strategy sits. Because you know, strategy is about simplifying decision-making. But just strategy is not going to ensure you deliver anything, right? So you have discovery. And for me, discovery, it's about uncovering what creates value. In Germany, you can use the definition of de-risking product ideas. It lands better. In other places, I just say it's about uncovering what creates value. But de-risking is about ensuring we invest our money in something that makes sense. And then you have delivery, which is about building what creates value. Sadly, most of the time, we start on the delivery conversation. We build a beautiful roadmap just to fool everybody. We think we know what they're doing when we actually don't know anything. But we are just getting ourselves busy. That's why I said, I think we are just fooling ourselves, and we need to stop that. These elements here, they help us have better conversations and make better decisions. That's it. Better conversations, better decisions. And what are the elements of strategy? So, for me, what will help us is knowing where we want to be. What is the vision? What is the purpose? Why are we doing that? And the vision is something inspiring. It should be hard to achieve, but doable. Some visions can be just 2 words. Does anybody know the vision of SpaceX? 2 words. Populate Mars. That's it. It's a vision. Don't need to talk more about it. But that's not going to be enough. What is the game you're playing? This is somehow how you show your strategy. I like using the lean canvas. This was created by Ash Maurya. The reason I like the lean canvas is because it has a beautiful narrative. For example, who do we serve? Who are the early adopters? What problems do they have? What are the available alternatives? What is our value proposition? So it will help us tell this story in this order. There are just 9 elements. Customer, problem, value proposition, and we will talk about something Tim mentioned there. How do we measure success? So this is part of your strategy. But one thing the lean canvas doesn't emphasize enough is about the differentiation. And I think the strategy needs to make it clear how to differentiate. I like having a value curve. When you look at the available alternatives, what is the value curve? This comes from something a little bit old, the blue ocean strategy, but still relevant. You want to know how you differentiate from your competition. Just make it transparent. And then we need to talk about the roadmap, but not that one. We should talk about the roadmap that is outcome-oriented, that will enable us to get to our vision somehow. Once we clarify these things here, what can we have? Better conversations, better decisions. And then we don't need to end the day and go there very sad. I know I talked a lot about things, but I have no idea what I achieved. Within this, you can focus on getting the work done. But you need to accept there is no such thing as one size fits all when it comes to strategy. You need to understand your context. And there are two things that will help you understand your context and try and finding which game you are playing, which strategy you could bring to that. Just two things, very simple. So the very first one, start with your audience. Use the adoption curve. Who are you trying to bring to your product? So for example, if you have a new product and you try going to the big companies, for sure, it's not going to work because these big companies, they are at the best early majority. They will only use your product once they have read reviews from somebody who has used already. The innovators, they are always looking for the new. They don't really care about that much of experience. They are trying things out because they want to be ahead of the curve. And the early adopters, they go in this direction also. They don't need reviews to start using your product. They will just start using because they need to have the new thing. And by having the early adopters, it will enable you to move to the early majority. And when it comes to late majority, service is what matters. It's beyond your value proposition. You need to tick some boxes. The service is end-to-end, everything is beautiful. And the laggards are those who will change only when there's no alternative. That is my mom, 2020, getting an iPhone because her Nokia stopped working. She had no alternative. So once you clarify your audience, you can start talking about strategy. What is the next thing? What about your product? Which stage is your product? Are you developing, still trying to go to market? So in this case, for sure, you need to adapt to early adopters and also the innovators. Or have you already found the market fit? You're in a growth stage, maturity. Or maybe your product reached its end of the life and it's going to go to decline. When you clarify these questions, you can start saying, like, what is the strategy I'm going to set here? If you're in the introduction, you need to have a go-to-market strategy. What is the objective you should have? Get a few users to love your product. Here, you're not looking for efficiency. You're looking to get, depending on your business, 10 to 100 users to love your product. You want to be in close contact to them. Because these people are going to write the reviews you need for the next part, for the next iteration of your product. If you're in the growth, there are multiple growth strategies, but then you are going to search for that. What about leveraging referral? What about exploring new audience as well? And if you are in the maturity, you're reaching already the top of what you can achieve, search about new revenue streams. Leverage loyalty. Apple is very good at doing that. They keep introducing new product, and then people keep buying because everything it's connected. But then, what happens once you go to the decline? Well, you need to have something to capture your audience, because if you don't, then you're going to be the next Kodak or the next Nokia. So you need to understand the game you're playing and adapt accordingly. And then you may look at me and say, good, where do I start? The first thing is about understanding reality. Look at your reality and say, how does that help us? And then you can see where to start. I will give you 2 ways of starting, as a product manager and as a product leader. But the very first thing is to look at some elements. When you look at ownership, are teams accountable for outputs or outcomes? Just talk about it, try understanding what is happening. And prioritization, how does that take place? Is it inside the team? Do they decide what to work on? Or someone is going to just throw a roadmap like that over the fence and hoping for the best? And decision making. Is it like we have to discuss everything because we have no idea what matters most? Or the team just focus on progress because, as Tim said, they know what to say yes or no to. And goals. Do you have them clearly defined and daily used? What do I mean by that? Instead of going to a daily stand-up and being something super boring, you say how what you're doing today contributes to your goal. When you have also a product review, you share how what you created contributes to your goal. You keep the goal alive and you use that to make a decision. When you're going to attend a meeting, you ask a question, how does this help us achieve the goal? And if the answer is no, you press that beautiful button called, I'm not going to attend this. You reject the meeting invitation. That's fine. And how do teams collaborate? Are they coordinating activities or are they collaborating? It's very different because coordinating is about discussing everything and so on. Oh, you do that, then I will remove these dependencies and so on. Remember, if you watch the keynote from Matthew in the morning, he said about the flow. The flow will be collaborative. You are just flowing, you're getting the work done, and so on. You remove dependencies. So this is, if you are here on the right, it's a good place to be. If you are more on the left, well, you're not alone, and you can change that. So you may get worried. I'm talking a lot about strategy here. Say, I don't know. I don't know where to start. I just don't have this thing here. And nobody's going to let me do anything. There are a few things you can do. You are not powerless. So let's look at product manager. Where can you start? If you're a product manager, you will most probably have influence. Most probably a product leader or somebody else is going to define the strategy. But the principle is very simple. Help others see what you're seeing. We do know when you're doing things that makes no sense. Let's just make them clear. So what about a feature report? You can have an honest conversation about it. If you create a report with all the features you delivered over the last 12 months, and then you see how often do customers use that. Generally, when I do that with some companies, the number is more or less like 50% of features are not used at all. Then you can ask one question. Is that the way we should continue to work? Creating features, nobody cares? Just ask this question. And you're going to get the chance of saying, what should we do instead? And if you can do something even better, touching the most sensitive organ of the human being. Do you know which one is that? It's this one. It's the pocket. If you can touch the pocket, showing the number, people are going to listen to you. If you say this costed this amount of money, and the value created for the organization was 10 times less, oh, they will panic. And then it's the moment you can change things. Another thing that is easy to do when stakeholders go to you and they want this bloody roadmap here, you just say, all right, let's do a few customer interviews. Use the job to be done approach, and then show the results of the interview to stakeholders. Get them to see that customers couldn't care less about the feature, they dream about it. And once you confront against reality, it is very hard to deny that. You need to move your decisions to evidence. And this will give you the cards you don't have, so you can make better product strategy. And what if you can suggest an attempt here? This you can tackle in different ways. There are a lot of companies working with output roadmaps. You cannot change that. But you can suggest something. You cannot change directly from one day to the other. That's what I mean. You can say, what if we invest, for example, 20% of our time focus on outcome? I know it's hard to track that. But you can say, for example, we're going to use just one sprint of our quarter focus on outcome. Let us do that. Or two, maybe. And then you see the result. And if you have 5 teams, you say, what if one team works toward outcome? And then you have to deliver. And if you deliver, you will have better conversations. And what about product leaders? Well, with a product leader, you have more than influence. You can change things. So let's start with making the hard decisions. That's the very first thing. You do need to have the guts to make a decision and say, this is what matters most right now. Singular, not plural. Because if you prioritize multiple things, teams will compete, and that will be very hard to collaborate. You will end up coordinating. So make the hard decisions. But don't do that alone. Get your teams involved. Those doing the work, they will understand what is most important. Listen to them. Then based on what you listen, you make the hard calls. And the last aspect is you need to move from upfront investment. For example, we're going to invest 3 months in building this cool, fancy feature here to incremental bets. For example, what can you learn in a day? And then see what you learn. Does it make sense to invest another 2 days, a week or so? Try making decisions based on evidence as you progress. That will be better. So you need to help leaders face reality. And most ideas we have, if you look at this, imagine the confidence level and the time. Whenever we start with an idea, at the beginning, our knowledge based on evidence is very close to 0. We have a hunch that something works or not. And the risk of getting things wrong is very high. Funny enough, generally, companies like making a commit like that when the knowledge is very low. That doesn't make sense. We need to change that. And regardless what you're doing, you always have a choice. And you need to make up your mind. You can be the victim of the circumstance. Whatever it is, I accept. But then understand that they are going to keep throwing this roadmap at your face, and you have to swallow. If you can make peace with that, so be it. Or you can be the hero of your story, and you change things. It's not going to be easy, but it's possible. And the question is, what is your choice? Thank you. One last thing, for those who want to know how to break free from this madness, I wrote a book. It's called Untrapping Product Teams. And it's not a book to tell you what you should do. It is a book about hope. Hope that you can do better product management when nobody else understands your job. So if you want to know more about it, check it out.
So thank you very much, David. Thanks for the honest words. I think we have time for one last question. We're a little bit out of time. So who has a question for David? There is one. Would you come to the front, please? Here's the mic. Thank you very much. And please tell your name and probably the company you work for.
Hi, my name is Anastas Kandic. I am a founder of my own company for managing ERP systems, Credo Active. Just one question is like, how do you get unstuck from having a developed product and getting your first testers in? So how do you get from that, like, let's say, initial stage? Because it can sometimes feel like you're kind of blindfolded and searching in a dark room, you know?
So you mean you're developing a product and how to get the first ones to test the product?
Exactly.
So there are different ways. If it's B2B, you can form a customer advisor board, for example, people who would be willing to test your product. They do want to understand what you are doing. And if you are in the B2C, you can find people who could have early access to that. For example, if I look at my book, I use product discovery to write my book. I didn't write a book in the beginning and I say, let's publish and hope for the best. I started with small things. And one of the steps was writing a product guide and put in my newsletter and seeing who would be interested in that. Then people downloaded that, they read it, and I interviewed many people to see what they understood. And what I learned is that they understood something different than what I meant. So I said, oops, I need to improve this thing. But it proved that my assumptions were wrong. I thought that people wanted actionable tips, but they want to learn from stories, and then the tips would come later. So I use these stories. So that's the thing. How can you get someone in the sphere to test parts, not the whole product?
So thank you very much, David. A big applause for David Pereira.
Yeah.
And if you want more content from David, follow him on LinkedIn. He has large followers, so he posts great content there. So on LinkedIn, he's a voice. So thank you very much, David.
Thank you.